is Nick Watts, and I'm the head coach of the Asia Debate Association, and thank you for your interest in this video. Today we'll be looking at a mini debate between two debaters over a topic, or resolution. For this debate, the topic is that we should ban newly coined words from kids' cartoons. Cartoons are very popular amongst kids, especially younger kids. It's also well known that children are much better at learning new languages than older people are. This is because children's minds are more impressionable than older individuals. Now, this is both good and bad. It means that, for example, for learning English, that the younger you start, the easier that it will be for you to eventually become fluent in a new language. But it also means that younger children are more impressionable and may be fooled into thinking problematic things about the world and incorporating some terms that are newly coined in cartoons in problematic ways, such as the Three Buster Robots Combine operation or the Lethal Moves Transition Flash. These newly coined words may not resonate in children's minds in a way that teaches them that they're simply used for cartoons, and some children may end up using these newly coined terms in regular day life, assuming that they represent the Korean language. Now, this is a problem for many of the older generations that have respect for the purity of ancient languages, such as Korean. Many elders are fearful that the younger generations had conflated these new words or misunderstood them and combined them with everyday Korean that risks not allowing children to understand the difference between newly coined words and traditional Korean words. So let's move on to the debate itself. The pro side of this debate is responsible for proving that the topic is correct. And so the pro side, or the first speaker in this instance, will be attempting to make arguments for why we should in fact ban newly coined words from children's cartoons. Our pro side has made the argument that it is a bad influence on children's minds precisely because they're so impressionable. The pro side of this debate has also combined this with a survey as a warrant or an example to support their argument. In this survey, the pro side has claimed that the recent technology of texting, which is available to children in a much wider fashion than it was even 5 or 10 years ago, means that younger and younger children are being exposed to newly coined words and ungrammatical sentences that are useful for short texting messages and increase the efficiency or the speed in which children are able to text. The pro side worries that learning these ungrammatical ways to talk simply because it's quicker risks convincing students that grammar is simply not important. And this survey makes the argument that some children may not even be able to write papers without using ungrammatical statements, simply because that's how they're used to talking with their friends in. The next speaker is the con side of this debate, who is responsible for arguing against the topic, that we should not ban newly coined words from kids' cartoons. Now, the con side in this debate has an interesting argument. Instead of citing a survey, the con side has instead chosen to talk about the nature of how languages work, and is making the argument that a language is not something static, is not something that will always be the same forever. And in fact, the con side argues that language is something more akin and more like a process, and that newly coined words will constantly be added to any given language. Even adults use these new words. In further speeches, I think the con should likely give us some examples of this. So let's move on. The next set of speeches are the rebuttal questions, or the rebuttal speeches, in which the debaters give their final thoughts and end the debate for the judge. The pro side once again starts off with the first rebuttal and argues and asks the question that what if 80% of school students are not even capable of writing a paper without using the symbol for laugh out loud, which has become ubiquitous or almost in everyday speech. Laugh out loud is used in English as well and is something that is infiltrating the language. And many students are not capable of even talking with their friends without using a symbol like this. The pro side asks the important question of what happens whenever the majority of students are not able to think in a way that's not in texting shorthand form. The pro side argues that as long as we're able to censor these words from cartoons, that children will at least be able to tell the difference between these newly coined terms and understand that their proper place is only when text messaging and not when writing full papers for school. But the use of these words in cartoons may leave some children, the more impressionable ones, with the assumption that it's okay to use these symbols, like this one, in everyday speech when talking with one another. The con side ends the debate with the last rebuttal, and instead of making an argument, chooses to end the debate with a rhetorical question, or a question that he leaves unanswered, which I think is not the best way to go about debating. He asks the question of, what about words that are responsible for naming new technologies? 50 years ago, smartphones didn't exist. 150 years ago, people did not even have a concept of what a robot was. And yet these words are understood as part of a language. In the same way that the ancient Korean alphabet is very different than the modern Korean alphabet, which has been standardized and made easier for people to understand and has made easier for foreigners to learn. The con side claims that it's obvious that there's a need to create newly formed words, but it's not really responded to the charge of the pro side, which says that it's not necessarily the use of these words that's problematic, but the assumption of children who watch cartoons that use these words and assuming that it's okay to use these words in academic circumstances, for example. So let's see who won this debate. The winner of this debate round was the pro side. And while both sides make persuasive arguments to prove their point, only the pro side had proper warrants to support their claims. Now this is important because to be a proper debate argument, an argument must have two parts, a claim and a warrant. The claim is the opinion or the statement, like the topic, that newly coined words should be banned from cartoons. Well, that's fine, but without giving a warrant or an example or a statistic or a fact that proves that your opinion is valid, it doesn't become an argument and stays an opinion. The use of the survey in this instance means that the pro side's argument is simply more persuasive to a judge than the con side's more rhetorical questions that are not supported by any empirical examples or any surveys or facts or warrants. And likewise, the pro side was able to create some distinctions that prove that even if the con side is correct and that newly formed words are necessarily a part of any language, that it's the inclusion of these words and symbols such as the laugh out loud symbol in children's cartoons is especially problematic because those younger students are the most impressionable and are easily fooled into thinking that those symbols have a place in more academic situations. Thanks again for your interest in this debate, and I hope that you learned something about language. Once again, my name is Nick Watts, and I'm the head coach of Asia Debate Association. Bye.